if you're taking your dogs to a pond or a lake, this is a very different setting than a pool or the ocean. And there are some things that you need to know to make sure you have a safe, happy, and healthy time at the pond or lake. And as somebody who grew up with both a pond and a lake in my life, there's a lot that I have learned about having your dog in that environment that I'll share with you to make sure that you are taking care of your pup while you're out and about and doing all these fun things. Now, ponds and lakes are great to swim in, but there are some things you need to be mindful of. The first of which is that most ponds and lakes actually put chemicals into the pond or lake to prevent algae. And this means it is not safe for your dog to go in for a period of time. So there is a section of time, it's usually about a week or two, that animals cannot go in the water because there are those toxic chemicals in there. You will see that it sometimes hurts fish. You'll see that it sometimes hurts some of the wildlife. So you have to be very, very aware of when those chemicals were put into the pond, and do not let your dog drink it. Do not let your dog go in it. People should also not be going in it during this time period. So if it's not your pond or lake, ask the questions before you do, whether it is a public pond or lake or a private family-owned pond or lake that you're going to. Know when the chemicals were put in and know when it is safe for your dog to go in there. You can ask them, but you also may want to do your own research. So find out what chemicals they put in and Google it so that you know if you can go in or not, so that it's safe for your dog. And then be mindful that your dog is not drinking a ton of it, because even after the fact, we don't want that in their bodies. So just be mindful, be careful of those things. Now, you also need to know that it is going to be dirty. It is not going to be a super clean environment in a pond. There is mud and there's muck, and sometimes there's sand pits that they can be in. There's cattails and there's weeds and there's, fish swim in there. It's not the super cleanest of environments. So you're going to want to bring tools to kind of clean up after your dog. So towels, you may want to have a hose to wash them off with. You may even want to bring their shampoo to wash them off if you have access to water after that, or bring like a jug of water to wash them off. Bring towels and blankets for them to sit in in your car. You want to bring things to clean them. There are things that you can use to clean off their paws. So you can use water wipes. You can use Dandelion's paw wash. There's a lot of different products that you can have for this. But make sure you do it before you put them in the house or in the car or any of those things, because they are going to be dirty. You may also want to have brushes so you can brush out some of that debris, because ponds and lakes are typically found around trees and the cattails and the flowers, and pollen falls and little seeds from the trees fall, and it's just stuff accumulates in ponds and lakes. It usually makes its way to the outside edges, so as you're walking into the water, you're going to pick up a lot of things, but fur tends to catch a lot of seeds and debris and seaweed and things that are going to be in that pond or lake. So you're going to get a dirty dog coming out of that pond, and you're going to want to clean that up before you go anywhere or you do anything. Also want to consider bringing a long leash for your dogs. This means they are going to be attached by their harness to a long leash that you have control of so that you can pull them in if you need to. And this is really good for dogs that don't have the best recall or who really love the water. The dogs that I used to have before I had these dogs that passed away last year were obsessed with the water. They loved our pond and our lake. And they would go out there and they would be so tired, they would be crying, but they wouldn't come in because they loved swimming so much. And I would have to swim out and get them and bring them back in because I didn't have a long leash for them, which was just silly of me. And so if your dog doesn't have the best recall, or if you're in an area you're unfamiliar with, or if you are in an area where they could potentially swim across the pond, get out and go into the woods or into someone else's property or something, having them on that leash definitely can work to your benefit. So having a long leash that is waterproof so it's not going to smell, having one that floats is really beneficial. I'll link a couple of my favorites down below. But longer leashes definitely going to work in your favor. And considering your dog's stability in the water is also going to be something that's valuable to you. If you have a strong swimmer, you're probably good to go. But if you have a dog who's new to the water or a bit unsteady or a bit afraid of the water, a life jacket actually might work to your benefit. Not all dogs are going to need life jackets or benefit from life jackets or even have a body shape that is suited toward dog life jackets, because they make them in very specific ways that they don't actually work for all dogs. But if your dog can benefit from it, having one keeps them afloat. It means they're not going to be able to sink down. They're not going to get as tired. You will be able to find them. And if you have a dog that perhaps likes to dive down to the bottom to get clams or to get something that's sunk to the bottom. You're not going to have a dog that's able to do that. If you have a life jacket, they are floating, baby. And so you've got a lot of benefit to having a life jacket if it suits your dog, if it suits your dog's needs, if it suits you or the location. It's not something you have to have, but it is something that could potentially benefit some dogs. It's also incredibly important to be aware that there will be plant life around these ponds and lakes to make them look a little bit more natural and a little more organic. So you're going to find things like cattails. There might be flowers. There might be tall grasses. There's going to be stuff there for most things. And so you need to understand where you're going before you go and know what plant life is there, because some things could potentially be toxic to your dog if they're going to eat it. And so before you go, check the place out. And once you get there, scout the area as well. You need to know what's there. Even if you are very familiar with that location, things could have popped up. I told you I grew up on a pond. I had a lake. I had access to all these things, and I very strongly knew the format, the layout, the landscape. I knew what was there, but sometimes things randomly sprouted, things randomly popped up. Sometimes stuff happened and there would be things that weren't there a couple of days ago. And so when you arrive, making sure you do a little bit of a sweep is going to work to your benefit. You can Google things when you get there if you need to, and using something like Google Lens is really helpful for snapping a picture and having it identify it for you so that you can then Google it to see if it's harmful to your dog or not, and then you can keep them away from those areas. You can remove things if you have permission to do so. You can do whatever you need to do to make sure you are having a safe time at that location. And you also want to be mindful of the pond or lake itself, because in addition to all of these things, the other entities that are using that pond or lake could impact how you're engaging with it. The lake that I grew up with was a very big lake, and it had a lot of people living around it and a lot of people using it. And one of the big things that people like to do there was use their motorboats on this lake, which meant there was a lot of pollutants in the water. This is not something that you want to drink. As we were going swimming, if our faces would kind of dip under the water and we would taste some of that water, it wasn't great. So that's not necessarily a place that you want your dog drinking that water. So be mindful of these things. What other entities are going to be using that lake? If it's just animals hanging out, you're probably okay. But if you've got things like boats or things with motor oil or different pollutants, just be mindful of where you're taking your dog. You have to think things through before you show up at these different places and just think it's going to be safe and productive for your dog to be there. So doing your research, making sure everything is going to be a qualified fit for your dog, a safe environment for your dog to be in, and somewhere that you are comfortable navigating should something happen or something go on. And then of course, making sure you have things like your emergency kit and all of those valuable things for traveling with your dog. We've got a full playlist on traveling with your dog to the ocean, to different places. Check it out, because all that also applies to ponds and lakes. Making sure you have that knowledge and preparation is going to work to your benefit and could potentially save your dog's life. So if you've got questions, go ahead and drop it down below. Let us know some of the best places that you like to take your dog swimming in the summer, from pools to oceans to rivers and lakes and ponds and streams and all of the fun things. If it's a public place like a beach you love to go to, let us know so that we can look into it as well, and follow along for daily videos helping you navigate the world of dog parenthood to help you level up for your pup to give them the best life possible without a ton of stress on you. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.